narrative. So this morning, I'm going to be reading the account of Noah, and I will be sharing some of the scientific understandings that occurred as a result of this moment in history, as well as some interesting pieces of information surrounding the account of the flood. Or at least what I find interesting, and hopefully you will too. We will begin with the mission that God gave Noah, found in Genesis 6, verse 13. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make thee an ark of gopher wood. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under the heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. But with you will I establish my covenant, and you shall come into the ark, you and your sons and your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shall you bring into the ark, to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. Of the fowls after their kind, of the cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing on the earth after his kind, 2 of every sort shall come to you, to keep them alive. And you shall take to thee of all food that is eaten, and you shall gather it to you, and it shall be food for you, and for them. And thus Noah did, according to all that God commanded him, so he did. Here we learn that Noah was given more than the task of building a giant boat. There are a number of things, but I want to focus on the call in verse 18, to bring his family into the ark. This was twofold, because it was also a promise. The call to build the ark was 120 years before the flood. In Genesis 6, verse 3, the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. When the sons of Noah entered the ark, Japheth was 100 years old, Shem was 97 years old, and Ham is recorded as being younger than both his brothers. This means that when God instructed Noah to bring his sons into the ark, they had not even been born yet. So God was promising Noah a family. And we do not even know if he was married yet, so potentially Noah had to first find a wife. Is there a way to fix this screechingness? Yep, sure. So, no. So here's how I worked out the ages of the sons. There is no record of the age of Ham, although he is recorded as being the youngest. In Genesis 9, verse 24, when Noah gets drunk, he awakes and discovers Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. For Shem, and an exact age is given. It's found in Genesis 11, verse 10. These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old when he begat Arphaxad, 2 years after the flood. Working backwards, this means Shem was 97 years old when he entered the ark. Japheth is the elder brother, as noted in Genesis 10, verse 21. Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth, the elder, even to him were children born. This means he must be the son that was born when Noah was 500 years old, because Genesis 5 states that Noah became a father when he was 500 years old. But Shem was born when Noah was 503, and Ham is younger. This means that only Japheth is the one left to be born when Noah is 500 years old. This means that Japheth was 100 when he entered the ark, as Noah was 600. Sometimes it gets a little bit confusing when you read the Bible because they put Shem always first, but he was only put first because they prioritize the fact that he carries the promise of the Messiah. So Noah first had to get a family and then raise them to follow God in a world that God described as incredibly wicked. Then he had the task of finding them suitable brides, women who were of good character and would not be put off joining the family of what I'm sure the world was calling the crazy boat maker. And all this while building a ginormous ship. Revelation warns us that we are also entering a time of great wickedness. So the account of Noah is a comfort to those who are raising families, as his success lets us know that it is doable. There is also the promise that all kinds of flying animals and land animals will be able to fit and inhabit the ark with enough food and duration for the flood. But how many animals are we talking about? God instructs Noah in Genesis 6 verse 19 to bring into the ark 2 of every sort, that they should be male and female. Later on in Genesis 7, God gives further detail to Noah. Of every clean beast you shall take to thee by 7s, the male and his female, and of the beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and the female. Of the fowls also of the air by 7, male and female, to keep their seed alive upon the face of the earth. There was to be a single pair of every unclean animal, and 7 pairs of all the clean animals, and 7 pairs for all the flying animals. Some think that it was only 7 animals for the clean, meaning 3 pairs and 1 left over. However, the record states multiple times they were all in pairs, 2 by 2. There was a male and a female, and they all entered in pairs. Therefore, it was 14 clean animals in 7 pairs. God makes this very clear by repeating the phrase male and female throughout the account, like it does in Genesis 7 verse 9. There went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, the male and female, as God had commanded Noah. Furthermore, the Hebrew word translated as 7s in the King James Bible literally reads 7 or Shiva, because the Hebrew language does not have a word for pair. The Hebrew language will sometimes then use repetition of a cardinal number. So to express the idea of 7 male and female pairs, a very natural way to do this in Hebrew would be to say 7, a male and his female. So there were 7 females, 7 males, 7 pairs for each clean kind of animal. But that is a lot of animals. We have to date documented 1.9 million different animal species. They could not have all fitted on the ark. But Noah was instructed to bring them, so it has to be possible. This means we need to understand what Genesis means when it says kinds, because it is not the same as species. The word kind is more aligned with the family in taxonomy. We glean this understanding from its use through Scripture, where kind is described as being able to reproduce the same type of animal as its parents, and therefore unable to produce offspring of an entirely different animal. For example, what we see in the world around us fits this biblical view. Today we find hares in the Arctic, hares in the desert, hares in all other parts of the world. Although each species of hare is a little different, enabling them to survive and thrive in their environment, they are all recognizable as hares and would have descended from a single pair on the ark. The same is true for many other kinds of animals. They are found worldwide, but they are obviously related. This means that only a pair, or 7 pairs, were to be housed on the ark from each family of animals, and this is possible. We're going to watch a short video of someone who speaks even faster than me, and they are going to show the math science surrounding the space on the ark.
Lots of people say there's no way that 2 of every known species in the world could fit onto Noah's Ark. You know what? We agree. But the truth of the matter is that the Bible doesn't claim that's what happened. So if we really want to get to the truth of it, we're going to need to see what the Bible really says about all this and then ask 3 questions. How many animals are we really talking about? How big were they? And how big was the ark? We answer those, we're closer to understanding the truth. Make sense? Good. So how many animals are we really talking about here? Well, let's jump back to move forward, shall we? Let's take a peek at day 5 of Creation Week and do a plain reading of Genesis 1 verse 21. And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. Jump ahead to Genesis 1:25, day 6, the same day man and woman were created, and here's what we get. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, the cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his his kind. So there you have a very clear account of the land and sea creatures created by God according to their kinds. Now, take a look at the phrase, according to their kind. What does it mean? Is it the same as species? I don't think so. It's possible that it's closer to what we call families in the typical biology class today, with some exceptions. Keep in mind that species is a man-made definition anyway. Confused? Let me explain. Let's take the dog kind, for example. We'll call the female dog taken on the ark Bingo, because that's the name of my first dog. Okay, from Bingo and her mate, you can get the various species of coyote, wolf, and even domestic dogs like the border collie, Great Dane, poodle, and so on. You get it? The different species we have now could have easily been generated after the flood from the information already present within the parent kind. So kind isn't the same as species at all. And a plain reading of the Bible teaches that Noah only had to take the representatives of the different kinds of land-dwelling, air-breathing animals. You don't believe me? Take a look for yourself. Genesis 6:20, of the birds after their kind, of animals after their kind, and of every creeping thing of the earth after its kind. 2 of every kind will come to you to keep them alive. That's as clear as it gets, folks. Simple instructions of what to take and what not to take. And in case we need further understanding of what God meant, he clarifies by telling us what died outside the ark. Genesis 7:22, and in whose nostrils was the breath of the spirit of life, all that was on the dry land died. Okay, so he's not talking about any sea creatures being on the ark, not the tiniest seahorse or the largest whale, because the last time I checked, they weren't swimming around on dry land. He's also not talking about plant life or single-celled organisms or bacteria. No, only things that have the breath of life in its nostrils and are on dry land. That's great, you say, but how many original kinds of land-dwelling, air-breathing creatures are on the ark? Well, to be quite honest, we weren't there, and I don't have the time for each and every detail, but one leading ark researcher did a whole bunch of calculations and was very generous with the numbers he used. He selected the genus level and found that there are less than 8,000 kinds, or about 16,000 individual animals. So let's just round up to say 30,000 and then call it even. It'll make the math easier anyway. Could 30,000 animals fit on the ark described in Genesis? That's a good question. Glad you asked. To answer it, we have to take a look at 2 more things. The size of the average animal and the size of the ark. Make sense? Of course it does. Moving on. We can't list every animal, but we've got things from the various bird kinds to the elephant kind, from the various dinosaur kinds to the smallest mammal kinds, and so on and so on and so on. So you take all the young adult animals, because nothing says the animals had to be the oldest and biggest, and you look at all the various sizes we know of today, even from the fossil record, and you do some calculating. You come to the conclusion that the average size of the land animal is actually smaller than a sheep. But let's just use a sheep as the average size for the sake of argument. So now we got the size of the average animal, a sheep, and we have the maximum number of sheep, 30,000. So are we going to need a bigger boat? Well, let's see how big it really was and if 30,000 sheep could fit on it. Back to the Bible. Genesis 6:15. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Genesis 6:16. You shall make a window for the ark, and you shall finish it to a cubit from above, and set the door of the ark in its side. You shall make it with lower, second, and third decks. Using what's known as the small cubit, that makes the ark approximately 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and about 45 feet high, with 3 decks, a door, and a window. So this ain't no canoe or a bathtub boat with giraffe heads poking out of it. This is a huge seaworthy vessel. The total available floor space on the ark would have been over 100,000 square feet. The total cubic volume would have been 1,518,000 cubic feet, which is about the capacity of 522 railroad stock cars. So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here, folks. How many sheep can fit into 522 stock cars? Well, just so happens I know the answer. The average double-deck railroad stock car can fit about 240 sheep. Now that's a lot of wool. So 522 stock cars holding 240 sheep-sized animals each gives us the hefty total of 125,280 sheep-sized creatures that could have fit onto the ark. Remember, we only needed to fit 30,000 on it, and 30,000 is almost 2 times the already generous estimate of animals necessary to represent all the species we see today. So it's easy to see that with more realistic numbers, there was plenty of room for cages, food, and even fresh water for the duration of the year-long stay that these animals had to be on the ark. And you know what? Ark researchers have studied this too, and I'll let you look that up. So there you have it. Simple reading of scripture, simple math, basic science. This fallible claim against the Bible is debunked. Adios. This video...
Glad you could keep up with it. So in the video, they took the genus level, which is a larger number than what would be the family level. They said it was 8,000, which they said was also already being quite generous. But even still, there was more than enough space for the representatives of all the kinds of land-breathing animals and birds plus their food. In addition to this, quite a number of animals can hibernate. Hibernation is a state where the animal's metabolic rate slows down, which is the chemical reactions happening in the body to give it energy. So the body temperature significantly drops, their heart rate drops, some can go as low as 5 beats per minute, and their breathing decreases. There are different forms of hibernation. The most well-known is where the animal sleeps so deeply it appears dead, and this is known as true hibernation. Another form of hibernation is torpor, a type of short sleep, The heart rate and the body temperature are reduced, but the animal can move around slowly. Some animals hibernate over winter and can go as long as 7 months. Others hibernate over summer. Some animals that hibernate for long periods are groundhogs, squirrels, bats, hedgehogs, tortoises, frogs, salamanders, bumblebees, chipmunks, the common poor-wheel bird, deer mice, lemurs, garter snakes, geckos, ladybirds, land snails, marmots, raccoons, moths, butterflies, and of course, let's not forget the bears. And there are more besides these. So let's take a closer look at just one of these amazing creatures that God made. The Arctic ground squirrel. It is found in Alaska and northern Canada. During the Arctic winter, the squirrel's body temperature can drop to -3 degrees Celsius, which is below freezing. But it will not die. Its blood and tissues remain unfrozen thanks to special proteins that act like antifreeze. Its heart will beat only once every minute. Its breathing is almost undetectable. Every few weeks, the squirrel briefly warms up, shivers itself back to life before cooling down again. This strange rhythm of freezing and revival allows it to survive for up to 9 months without food. When spring finally returns, it awakens, shakes off its icy slumber, and scurries into the sun as if nothing happened. And this is able to happen nowadays, with an environment and food conditions well after the flood. I assume that pre-flood, the food was more nutritious, and the health of the animals was much better than what they are today. So just like the Arctic ground squirrel, newts can also hibernate. In a lecture given in the University of Cambridge in 1818, Dr. Edward D. Clark, a geologist, described some unusual newts that he had found in a chalk quarry. He had been looking for fossils, he said, and was digging in the quarry at a depth of 82 metres when he came across a number of fossilised sea urchins and newts. 3 of the newts were so well preserved that Dr. Clark carefully dug them out of the rock and placed them on a sheet of paper in the sun. To his considerable surprise, the newts began to move. Within a short time, 2 of the animals were dead, but the third seemed so lively that Dr. Clark placed it in the pond. Its response was to promptly escape from him and disappear. According to Dr. Clark, the rejuvenated newts were unlike any of those locally living, and they belonged to an extinct species previously unknown to science. But getting back to the ark. This means that Noah would not have needed to feed, water, or exercise all the animals every day. It also means the ark was more than big enough for all the animals and food, possibly too big. There was room for more people should they have heeded the warnings and preaching of Noah. For as Peter informs us, Noah was a preacher of righteousness. Now, if only a few animals were taken on the ark, how can we account for all the variation and the differences that make up so many species today? It's because our God is amazing at creating. Within each creature, the code he used is called DNA, and it allows for incredible variation within families of animals. DNA is kind of like a blueprint that describes how the finished product is to be built. It determines how long the fur will be, how curly the tail, the eye colour, how digestion will work, whether it will have short or long legs, etc. This information is all coded in the DNA using chemicals. The information is copied and reshuffled each generation as they reproduce. DNA is made up of many genes. Genes are small sections of DNA that carry information for making one thing, or one enzyme. Half of the DNA will come from your father, and half comes from your mother. I'm going to use the dog family to explain a little of how DNA can account for the variation within a family. Dogs would have been unclean, so they would have only had 2, a male and a female. And from this pair, we get all the different variations of dogs. In dog coats, it has been discovered that there are only 3 genes that account for all the variation of dog fur that we see across the entire family of dogs. It's FGF5, KRT71, and RSPO2. I don't know where they come up with these names. But I'm going to use FGF5. It determines if the dog will have long or short hair. And we're going to use this for our demonstration. The long hair gene is recessive and the short hair gene is dominant. I'm going to use a lowercase h for the recessive gene for long hair and a capital H for the dominant short hair gene. This means that we need 2 long hair genes for the long hair trait to be seen. Otherwise, it's like the long hair gene is there, but it's silent. If the parent pair have genes for both, long and short hair, the parents will have short hair, but their offspring could be of both types. We can see this play out on this chart. The mother and father can only give 1 gene each, either a dominant or a short hair gene, or the recessive long hair gene. If they give each of their dominant short hair genes, the pup will have 2 dominant short hair genes and they will have short hair. If the father gives the dominant short hair gene and the mother gives the recessive long hair gene, the pup will have genes for both but will have short hair. If the parents give their recessive long hair genes, then the pup will just have long hair. There is a 25% chance that the offspring will have long hair and genes for only long hair, a 25% chance that the offspring will have genes for only short hair, and a 50% chance that the offspring will have short hair but have genes for both. This means that the dogs came off the ark in the first generation of puppies. They could have had long and short hair in their litter. If then some of the long-haired dogs got separated from the others and could only breed amongst themselves, they could only give the long hair gene to all the generations following. We would then say that a new species has been born, but this is actually a loss of genetic information. Nothing evolved. There's no DNA that's been made. They have lost a gene in their group to have short hair. All the varieties of species within the family group are not the result of new DNA being spontaneously created, but the result of a loss of DNA, the loss of options within the group. New species within each animal family, are formed when certain genes are excluded from the group. Each new species is simply revealing the complexity and the creativity of God in how he made DNA. And this is just looking at 1 gene. If we duplicate this across strand type, like curly or straight, the colour of the fur, whether it has a smooth face or a bearded, we get all the variations of dogs that we see today. The same type of variation can happen within all the families of animals, resulting in numerous variations within each family. So from the 2 dog kinds that went on the ark, the 2 dogs that went on the ark, with no evolution involved, they have given us all the varieties of dogs that we see today. We have a truly creative and intelligent God who, as we learn more about science, the more in awe we are of the wonders in his design and creation. We can be grateful that he is also a God who cares. His nature is to save. His justice required action and the destruction of the world, but his love granted us mercy and a way of safety through the flood, the ark. As this world becomes more dark and filled with violence and wickedness, we can have hope that just as Noah lived through a time like this, so can we. And this is where we will leave Noah's Ark today. There actually is a part 2, and it's coming up in January the 10th. And we will delve into the journey and the timeline of the flood and another smattering of science that shows how concepts used to support evolution, in fact, are a direct result of the flood. So I'll see you back here in a few weeks for part 2 of Noah's Ark.